So we'll make a start. If we have some more people in later, maybe come and join the fun. So welcome to this session. My name's John Hackston. For those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Head of Thought Leadership at the Mindfulness Company. I still haven't quite figured out what Head of Thought Leadership means, but it's a fun job, so I'm sticking with it for now. Just having already looked at the title of this session, of this presentation, you probably worked out two things. First of all, we are going to be talking about some research. And secondly, we're going to be talking about VUCA. Okay, show of hands. Before today, and before you looked to see what the session was, who had heard of VUCA before? Okay, not less than half a group. Okay, so VUCA is a phrase, an acronym that's been around for a little while, and this is what it stands for: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. And the idea is that increasingly so, lots of aspects of our lives, and the world of work in particular, things are more volatile, things are moving more quickly, things are more uncertain, you don't know where they're going, they're more complex, more things are joined together, something happens in China and something else happens in Little Keys the next day, and it's all very intertwined, and also ambiguous. It's less clear exactly what's going on. This is a phrase that's been around, we were just having a conversation before, certainly around 5 years or so, but becoming increasingly used like this. And what we're going to be doing in the next hour is looking at 3 research studies that we've carried out at the Mindfulness Company to really pick away at aspects of VUCA to help people use their knowledge of psychological type to cope with this VUCA world that we have. And the 3 research studies we're going to look at, one is about well-being at work, where we surveyed about just over 10,000 people, ask them about aspects of their well-being at work and what contributes to that. And we're going to look at the results of that and how our knowledge of type can help us adapt and increase our well-being in the world of work. We're going to be looking at a study we did on thriving in the gig economy. Another show of hands. Who's heard of a gig economy before? Okay, well, more of you. Anybody here seems as a freelancer, going from job to job or contract to contract? Okay, so in the strict terms, you may not be an Uber driver or a Deliveroo person, but you really are part of the gig economy, because that's what it's all about. We'll talk about that in more detail in a wee while. And finish off by working in an always-on culture. And the always-on culture is sort of what you're doing there, really. It's always have to be connected. And that's nice. It's that thing whereby you have your phone by your bed and it's midnight and you sort of get an email and you check it. It's that the possibilities of always being connected, but also the downsides of that as well. So that's what the always-on culture is all about. Okay? Any questions so far? Okay, let's kick off with that first study then, well-being at work. Now, you may or may not see that as a way of achieving well-being at work, what that particular guy in that picture is doing. What we're going to be doing is, first of all, asking you, before we define what well-being is, to do a short exercise. And I'm going to ask you a few questions. And I'd like you just to reflect on your answers to those questions. Reflect on your answers to those questions. By all means, write stuff down, but you don't have to. Just reflect on your answers. So here is the first question. Think of the last time you felt sustained positive emotion at work. So these are all about your work. Right. Joyfulness, cheerfulness, happiness, amusement, all. Think about occasion just for a moment and think about how it affected your work. Just take a moment to do that. Next question. Think of the person with whom you have a positive relationship at work. What makes that relationship positive for you? Third question, there's going to be 6 of these in total. Think of a time when you thoroughly enjoy the work activity but really your strengths or your talents. What was that like for you? Okay. Think of a role or an activity at work that gives you a real sense of meaning or a real sense of purpose. How does that help you? How does that help other people? Think of something you do that gives you a sense of achievement or accomplishment at work. How does that achievement make you feel? And last but not least, or possibly least actually, when did you last feel a strong negative emotion at work? So, it might be anger, or depression, or anxiety, or dejection, or something like that. How did that affect your work? Okay. Everyone had a chance to think about your answers to those questions? The reason I'm asking you these questions is that they link into the model of well-being that we've used. So we've used a model derived from the work of a guy called Martin Selleck, but it's not exactly the same as the model, but that's where it's came from. And what Seligman suggested that well-being at work, or well-being in general, is not just one thing, it has different aspects and different facets. These are the scales that we have for well-being at work. So, positive emotions. Positive emotions, yeah, the extent to which you are experiencing those positive emotions at work. So, things like frequent feelings of happiness, feelings of contentment, and feelings of pleasure. And that first question we asked you related to the scale of positive emotions. Then we have relationships. Having mutual feelings of concern and caring and support for other people in the workplace. And that was the second question. Engagement is about having that absorption and engagement and contact with the things you're doing at work, which was the third question. Meaning is, it's about what it says really, it's about having meaning in your work, which is that question. Accomplishment is about pursuing success or mastery in a task or mastery of something just for its own sake, which is that question. And last, yes, and anyways, least, negative emotions is about being pessimistic, negative, having of negative emotions, and that was the last question. Okay. We surveyed nearly 11,000 people over 3 years, one more women than men. This was an international sample as well, across the world. And let's look at the overall results. Now, the good news is that on a scale of 1 to 10, overall well-being was actually pretty high, 7.5. So what this suggested, the people we surveyed, and it was a cross-section of people in a whole range of different jobs across the world, the people we surveyed felt on the positive side in general with well-being. These are average scores, obviously. Some people are obviously down at 1 and some people are up at 10. This is the average.
Is this within the workplace or by...
This is about within the workplace.
It would have been in the workplace.
It's in the workplace, yeah.
Okay.
Well...
No pressure then.
But people didn't necessarily fill in the questionnaires at work. And it was all confidential, and it wasn't through their organisations, it was, but it was about their...
And it wasn't online?
It was online.
Okay, so it's not confidential.
It's
I'm just clarifying.
It's as confidential as we can make it.
Where we do surveys does make so much difference.
It's as confidential as we could make it because we didn't ask people's names, we didn't ask we made sure we didn't check their IP addresses, all that stuff. Yes, some devious soul could have hacked in there, I guess, but it was as confidential as we could make it. And in terms of the individual aspects of well-being, what we found was that mostly they were quite close to that overall aspect. You notice that the highest one there was relationships. People seem to be, on average, think that was the highest area of well-being in their work. Negative emotions rather lower, suggesting that in general they didn't experience too many negative emotions directly at work. Positive emotions, one of the other lower, slightly lower ones, again, people, although we may find relationships satisfying, have positive emotions just a little bit less, so experience a little bit less of those things in the workplace.
John, I'm sorry to ask a question. You might
Yeah,
have said this.
ask away.
What's the numbers again?
The numbers is we transform,
it's
it's a scale of 1 to 10.
So it's the average of people's, how they felt about it.
So this is the average of where people scored on each of these individual
Right.
scales.
So
Yeah.
3.79 for negative
For negative emotions. So that's saying that people did not experience so many negative emotions as they experienced the other things, by some degree. Yeah.
Those 6 questions that you posed to us.
We actually, it wasn't just those 6 questions, it was a whole longer questionnaire. Those 6 questions will give you a feel for what those scales were about. Thank you. So that's the order, if you like, of those factors for people in general. And what we find when we look at individual types is that, generally speaking, the order is quite similar for nearly everybody. For nearly, on average, again, there's going to be individual differences, but for nearly everybody each time, relationships was the top one, with the exception of INTJ, ENTJ, ESTJ. Yeah. But negative emotion was the lowest of all of them. So there's quite a lot of commonality across people of different type preferences in the order of these. Oh. Sorry. What I should have said right at the outset is that I'm going to give you one of these to take away, which has got all that stuff for boiling. But feel free to take as many photos as you want to. I'll try not to spoil them. I put my case.
I wouldn't take any more. That would be fine. Thank you, John.
Okay. So one of the things we looked at was where the differences by things like gender or age or geographical region. Let's talk about gender to begin with. Do you feel that in terms of overall well-being at work, women would come up higher, men would come up higher, or perhaps there's no significant difference? How's it for men? How's it for women? How's it for no difference? How's it for not sure? The answer is there's no significant difference. Women actually came up slightly higher, significantly so, but only slightly on engagement and positive emotions. So there's no difference between men and women. What about age? Do you think there'll be any age differences in the workplace? With people of different age groups, on average, be exhibiting high well-being? What direction do you think that would be?
I think the older are more content.
Yeah, the older, the better, more happy. So.
We have things to look forward to. Obviously, this is workplace. This is workplace well-being. The other thing we looked at was geographical region, and again, these are big chunks of region. But people in Australasia, so in Australia, New Zealand. Anyone here from Australia or New Zealand? You belong to a happy country, on average. With Asia coming up lower, so Europe quite down a little bit. And these are, although they're not huge, they are statistically significant differences. So there are some differences across regions. There are some of these differences going on. The well-being does, we found, also vary by type as well. So, any suggestions for those type differences? Let's have a shout out. Do you think any particular aspect of type or any one type might be particularly high or particularly low, on average, in terms of well-being? And although, obviously, we have over 60 types here, remember this is based on over 10,000 people, so there's quite a few people on each of these blocks.
I think an ENTJ is generally quite well up there.
ENTJ is quite well up there? Okay.
I was going to say that introverted thinking types like INTP maybe low because that's a very critical function. I mean, it's always looking for flaws.
So that criticism
so
tended to...
they may be, reporting less well-being.
Okay.
I don't know. And it may
and
just
this is
be an
self-report.
artifact.
This is how people will see it themselves. Yeah. So, well, there's the results. The most obvious difference is, on average,
STP.
if you have preferences for introversion, you're likely to have or express or see yourself as having a lower level of well-being. And indeed, let me just get the exact numbers for you here. On average, every single introvert group has lower levels of well-being than every single extrovert group. So the highest introvert groups are ISTJ and ISFJ on 7.34. The lowest extrovert groups are ESTP and ENTP on 7.70. So every single introvert group, on average,
maybe they're still thinking about it.
It might be.
Statistically, that's not a huge difference, though, is it?
Well, it's an appreciable difference. It is a significant difference. One of the interesting things, actually, for this research for us personally, is that we have two lead researchers on this project. One is my colleague Rich, who's based in California. He has preferences for ISTP, which is the lowest group on average. And the other lead researcher is my colleague Martin, who works in Australia, and he has preferences for ENFP, which is the highest on average. It was interesting that cost me when those two were working together, when they looked at results of it. And that's me there with INTP.
I
Yes,
haven't got to look at that side yet, but what's interesting on the introvert preference is that apart from the ISTP, ISFP, all the others that actually look fairly equal are all equal on their dominant function.
Yes, I think you're right. I think you're right. Yeah, I think you're
I
right.
haven't looked at
Again,
it
the
yet.
differences
That's just
between introverts are a little bit too small to be sure compared with the overall difference. One of the things we found in lots of studies, and we found other studies, is that on average, people who prefer introversion tend to report lower levels of well-being, job satisfaction, etc., than extroverts. And I'm not, as somebody with preference for INTP myself, I'm not saying this is something about introverts. It may be something about our world, for good or ill, but you often find this sort of finding. If you look at the findings for the individual aspects of well-being, they tend to follow the same pattern. So that's positive emotions, tracking just below the average, as you saw from the overall group. Relationships, engagement, meaning. This graph starts to get more difficult to see what's going on, but you can see the general pattern. Accomplishments and negative emotion. So again, by and large, with a few little tweaks, the individual facets follow the same pattern. One of the... Sorry, go ahead.
Just ask, just thinking of kids, and I wonder what percentage of those people are in a work situation that they have managed to fit into with their own preference. Do you see what I'm
Really
talking
interesting
about?
question. I think that's something we didn't cover. This will be a really good thing to look at for the future.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of talk in the wider IO psychology field recently about the idea of job crafting, that you craft your job to suit you, which may or may not suit the organisation, but you're crafting your job to suit you in various ways. And I think one of the things we'd like to do is to look at the influence of personal type on that. Yes.
Just out of interest, were particular industries or sectors chosen, or was it anyone working?
It was anyone. It was anyone working. We've got a bigger breakdown in the report. I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what it was. So, one of the things I might say was that we know there's lots of evidence that well-being is good for individuals, for the clues of the labour extent. But the question is, is it good for organisations? Why would organisations bother to put their people through stuff that might help them to enhance their well-being, or allow them the time to do that? There's lots of evidence outside that actually enhanced well-being is good for things like job satisfaction, productivity, and so on. But we thought we'd ask some questions about it as well. These are the results that we found. So these are correlations, the numbers in the boxes there. So we find essentially that people who have high levels of overall well-being have high job satisfaction, express a greater emotional attachment to the organisation, and exhibit more organisational citizenship behaviours. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful. What organisational citizenship, careful how I say this, what organisational citizenship is essentially, about being a good citizen to the organisation, about doing stuff that's useful for the organisation, stuff that isn't necessarily in their formal role or they're formally rewarded for, but stuff that helps the organisation along. The individual behaviours are really things like being nice to your fellow workers, be courteous and kind and helpful to your fellow workers. The organisational behaviours are behaviours like being conscientious, doing the right thing. And again, people with high levels of well-being tended to exhibit more both individual and organisational citizenship behaviours. And the red ones are negative correlations, so the people of high well-being were less likely to say they were intending to leave the organisation, less likely looking for a new job, and less likely to say, I just have to stay here. I feel obliged to stay here even if I don't necessarily want to. So again, high well-being, good for the organisation as well. Okay. So the question is, what can you do at work to enhance well-being? I'm not quite sure why I picked this picture. I think I had it lying over a presentation, so I thought it's not meant to be me or anything.
Although there is a remarkable similarity.
There is it. Just as well I didn't bring a vest along and some shorts. I'd have worn those tomorrow just to show you. So the question is, what can you do at work to enhance your work well-being? But also, what can you do outside of work to enhance your work well-being? So let's see. Actually, I may just get you to discuss this in your table groups. So spend 5 minutes in your table groups thinking what activities can you do to enhance your well-being at work, both actually at work and the stuff you might do outside of work as well. Okay? So 5 minutes, off you go. Across the whole group, these are the sort of things they come up with, the top 5 work activities. And there are, I think, some resonances with things that you've been saying. So focus, if you can, on work tasks that interest you, on things that make you feel positive, where you learn something new, being able to take breaks when you need to, and to take on challenging work that adds to your skills and knowledge. And in terms of things outside of work, things like, spending time with family or friends, listening to or playing music, reading, focus on the positives, exercise, playing sports, or going for walks. So, perhaps the sort of things that you might think. What is the case is that we today have only had time to really talk a little bit about what we found in this research. There is a report which goes into this in a lot more detail, and that does include, you can download it from our website, and that does include tips for each individual type as well. So the things that work particularly well for each individual type. And again, to save you writing all of these down, I do have some copies of this. You can also download it from our website, but please do
Thank you.
take a copy of that as well.